Good afternoon, Boiler Mechanic here. We're going to do our week in review. Week of February 18th, 2024. I actually have a monologue today. And then we're going to get into an extended deep dive into a situation going on in the world that a lot of people probably aren't paying much attention to. First and foremost, let's get into this little monologue. So I've been putting a lot of thought into this, and I just got to get it off of my chest. When it comes to people in the United States or Europe taking a position on an issue like Ukraine versus Russia or Israel versus the Palestinians, I am convinced, given my understanding of American psychopathy, that for most Americans, taking a side in an issue like Israel and Palestine, for most Americans, is nothing more than a virtue signal. And what does that mean? That means when people express opinions or engage in activism for either Palestine or Israel, to them in America, for the most part, for most Americans, it's not about the Israelis or the Palestinians. It's about themselves. It's about their own self-aggrandizement. It's about showing their righteousness, their self-righteousness. It all goes back to the fact that from a psychoanalytical perspective, Americans are narcissistic, generally speaking. Their heads are so far up their own asses that they actually thought that they could send Ukraine a few Javelin missiles and a couple M1 Abrams tanks and a few HIMARS systems, and that would defeat Russia. That's how far up their ass Americans are. So far up their ass that they think that sending some greenbacks over to Ukraine is going to turn the tide of the war. Or at least they thought that. I don't know how anyone could think that at this point. And with Israel, likewise, a lot of the support for Israel in the United States comes from, probably more so than the Jewish community, it comes from the Christian community of America. You can call it the evangelicals, although I don't think that really applies. You can call it whatever you want, but it comes from these Christians who think that this is, this whole situation, a lot of them anyway, believe this whole situation is foretold in the Bible. They have some really crazy beliefs. They think that this is a step in the inevitable rapture that's coming, that the second coming of the Messiah is on its way. That's what a lot of these Christians believe. Now, some don't. Some also believe that it's better to support Israel simply because it's Israel. I guess in their minds, it's in the Bible, so it's Israel. We have to support Israel. For these Christians, it's not about, obviously, for example, how do you think you would react if you honestly felt that the world was nearing its end? Would you act normally? Would you go live your life and go buy stuff at Walmart and go to movies and all this and all that? There have been instances in history when societies collectively did believe that the end of the world was near. One of those instances was in Israel in the year 132 AD, in what is today Israel, The majority of the Judeans, who were at that point under Roman rule, believed that the Messiah had come and that the end of the world was near, that God was coming to earth, and all hell broke loose. And Israel was, Judea, is what it was called at the time, was essentially destroyed, but not before the Judeans wiped out 2 Roman legions, by the way. But when people think that the end of the world is coming, they don't act normal. So ask yourself, go ask these Christians if you ever meet one of these. I've heard it over and over again. Do you really believe that the world is going to end? Why are you living life normally then? These people do not believe that the world is about to end. What they're doing is they're virtue signaling. They're saying, look at me. I support Israel. I'm going to recite now all of these biblical facts so I can look like the better Christian, so I can look righteous. It's all about themselves. Likewise with a lot of the Palestinian activists. I've noticed a lot of bleed over from the former BLM types that were getting funded by all of these NGOs, leading up to a few billionaire oligarchs. A lot of them have crossed over into Palestine and being Palestinian activists. You can see it. You can see the influence of the money in the Palestinian activism. I'll take it, but it still remains a fact that a lot of these people that are Palestinian activists right now are professional activists. They don't actually believe in the cause. They're doing this for money, for the donations, for the clout, so that they can be involved in more activistic activities in the future. They're getting money from a pipeline from people like Soros and many others besides. They understood that BLM had ran its course. People in the inner cities started asking, hey, where did the money go? Where did that $100 million go? Why hasn't anybody built so much as a fucking basketball court in the inner city? If Black Lives Matter had $100 million and there wasn't one basketball court or one community center built in any of the inner cities, that's when people started asking questions, and that's when you start to see BLM silently fold up, and now no one talks about it anymore. But a lot of those BLM grifting activists, these professional activists, they went over into the pro-Palestine activism. And like I said, sympathizing with the Palestinians myself, I'll take it. But that doesn't take away from the fact that they are grifter professional activists. And it's a combination of a virtue signal for them and a living. How can you actually call yourself a legitimate activist if you depend on that activism for a living? Think about it. The cause should come first, but if you are taking money and donations and relying on that and getting rich off of that, the cause is never going to come first. You're always going to be compromised at that point. So in America, a country of mostly narcissistic, materialistic, overall ignorant and illiterate people, that's what America has become. Because they've had it too good for too long. I've said that many times. In America, people take positions on Israel and Palestine, not because they actually care about either or. It's all about their own narcissistic, attention-seeking, virtue signaling. So that's my little monologue, a short one. I wanted to get into one situation here that's kind of under the radar. I've been talking about it, and that is the situation in Congo. Now, if we go to, let me check on last week as well. Last week, I think it was one of the. I think it was last week or the week before. Maybe I have to click on the week before. A lot has been going on in Congo. Yes, the week before, most likely. Okay, there's a lot going on in the Congo. Here, I think it's in this article or one of these articles. In the last few weeks, the president of Congo has, for the first time in a long time, at least the first time that I've heard of, specifically accused Rwanda of stealing mineral resources, looting mines from eastern Congo. And apparently, the more you look into this, first of all, I have to give a shout out to Africa Insider. I'm going to have to put his video in here. Africa Insider did a very good video where he breaks this down in an 8-minute video. He's probably your best online YouTuber that does short form videos on African issues. And he's fantastic, and I would recommend him. Africa Insider. So I've been suspecting for some time that something's been going on, that there's shenanigans. First of all, you have ISIS attacks in Congo. Then I start hearing about, through Africa Insider, and I start looking into this. Rwanda and Qatar are very close at this point. Qatar is actually opening up a airplane hub, an airline hub, somewhere on here. I looked it up just a minute ago. Qatar Airways becomes first Middle Eastern airline with cargo hub in Africa. Cargo hub. Now here, you have a very good, very detailed report about how Rwanda is basically stealing mineral resources from the Congo and laundering those resources. Essentially what they're doing is Rwanda has dummy mines in their country that aren't actually mining anything. And they're using that as the justification for all of the minerals that they are exporting to a variety of places. Specifically, Qatar is one of them. But the United States has received a lot of those resources as well. Of particular interest in eastern Congo is this mineral right here, tantalum, which is a chemical element on the periodic table, atomic number 73, very important for electronics. Now, I was just browsing this, and I know quite a bit about electronics. They are very important for small-scale capacitors, which are essential components in everything. Basically, capacitors are like mini batteries, and they have a lot of useful applications in electronics. Well, Australia was one of the largest producers in the world, but it seems like they've run out of tantalum. I think this chemical is a derivative of cobalt, generally found in the ore cassiterite. So if you're a Dwarf Fortress fan, you know what cassiterite is. Very important for capacitors, for small capacitors. It can be made very thin and form very small capacitors. And that's very important in things like phones and other very small scale electronics. It's also an alloy it's good for making alloys that are very tough, very durable. I've heard about it being used in military gear, all that. I guess this is the ore that they pull out, or one of them. Now, the problem is that the United States and Europe, a lot of countries have laws against taking minerals from a conflict zone. So what they've resorted to doing is having Rwanda create all of these fake mines and then stealing the resources from Congo and then sending them over to Rwanda and then sending them to their final destination. And Qatar is a big one. And look at this. Qatar opens a cargo hub in Africa. And look at this. Another signature of Qatar. ISIS, Islamic State group rebels causing problems in Congo. This is another region with a lot of mineral resources up here. This is Ituri province. I think it's a different mineral of interest up there. Meanwhile, we have China, as a lot of people should already know, is very heavily vested in Congo. So we have all of these situations congregating in a single country. China has a very big presence in Congo. They are, some people would say, stealing mineral resources, but these are contractual agreements that China has made with Congo, and China is giving them something in return, and people in the West call this stealing. Well, no, that's not really stealing. That's Congo and China entering into a deal. Stealing is what's happening right now with these rebels that are essentially Rwandan troops that are crossing the border. Okay, is what they're doing is they're crossing the border. Then they start calling themselves M23. But they've been found with Rwandan military identification. So we know they're Rwandan troops. They're coming over here. They're taking over this region. And the allegation is, and there's a lot of proof here, we got this report from 2021, a very detailed report. Oh, this one isn't so detailed, but this is a report. This is the very detailed report. This report gets into how the dummy mines and fake corporations, was it this one? No, it wasn't this one. Rwanda's still looting. There was one by, that's Medium. There was one by a Canadian press firm. This report from September 2023, Canadian Dimension, very detailed, very well-sourced report, getting into how they set up the fake corporations, who all is involved. There's several Americans involved. Qatar is heavily involved. All these minerals. It's got a lot of links here. And I would recommend this article. It gives you, it's not like a super long article, but it's good. It's got plenty of source material. So what we're seeing here may be the next big battleground in the world. You have China coming in. You have the Western powers using Rwanda as a proxy coming in. And all of them want these resources. These resources, these minerals are very, very important right now for chips and for everything else. So this is going to be a big hotspot. Not many people are talking about it. I have a personal special interest in Congo and in Africa. Well, I'm just interested in Africa generally. So keeping an eye on this. We'll see if Russia gets involved. We'll see if China starts pushing back. We'll see what's going on. This is a article from a few weeks ago about how China renegotiated one of these agreements. And so the Chinese are actually, basically giving Congo concessions. And so China wants to stay in that region and continue to do the deals that they're doing. Meanwhile, the West seems to be the West with Qatar, which is a client state of the United States, is using. So you got a proxy of a proxy situation. Rwanda is being used as a proxy of Qatar, and Qatar is essentially a proxy of the United States. So you got a double proxy situation going on here. I'll tell you, there's always something new with this. So that's the Congo situation. I'm very interested in this. I'm going to be laser focused on this. What else is going on? Another situation that I've been kind of focused on is Haiti. You had a couple things going on. This was an interesting report that came from, I don't know what the archive is. Let me kill some of these extra tabs here. So this was a Reuters? Was it Reuters? I don't know what report this was. This looks like Associated Press. I don't know what. Oh, Reuters. Okay, it's a Reuters report that basically the United States, first of all, is forcing its domestic rice production on Haiti. Haiti doesn't. Basically, all of the local Haitian farmers have been put out of business by U.S. rice imports, and the rice is poisonous. It's filled with arsenic. So we're sending Haiti poisoned rice. I mean, should we be surprised? When have we not been assholes to Haiti as Americans? I don't know. Tell me. This was an interesting story. The widow of Haiti's president, who was murdered last year, in a very this is still a developing story. Um, it's possible, the way I see it, Miami Herald does a lot of good work on this too. I had a couple Miami Herald stories on here last week about this. So it's possible that the current president who took over for the assassinated president was involved in the assassination. The widow, there's a big investigation going on. A lot of people are being indicted, and the widow of the assassinated president, she was indicted earlier this week. So there's a lot going on with this. One of the guys, interestingly enough, one of the main guys that probably had a lot of information about this, he was extradited to the United States. I don't know why the Haitians didn't keep him in country, but I guess the United States probably really wanted him out of Haiti really bad, and now he's in Miami somewhere, and he's facing charges for something unrelated to the assassination, or it's a lesser charge or something. Why is it that the United States wanted to get a hold of him so quickly and prosecute him in the United States? That's my question. He was the guy who was a doctor from South Florida, I believe. The Haitians had him, and they gave him to the United States. So that was interesting. So Haiti continues to suffer very badly. We should all pray for the Haitians. Clown World. Some Clown World this week. Apparently, some jets were scrambled for a balloon. So apparently, NORAD, which is the alert system of the U.S. military, got spooked by a balloon and sent up some F-16s or something. So pretty ridiculous. It was obviously not a threat balloon. I don't believe, actually, the Chinese balloon was a spy balloon. I don't believe it. Officials came out later on, much later on, after most people forgot about the Chinese balloon situation. Officials in the United States, I think it was Mark Milley, came out before he retired and said the Chinese spy balloon, did not gather any intelligence or any useful intelligence. Okay, well, if it didn't gather any useful intelligence, that means it wasn't gathering any intelligence at all. Let's just put it that way. It was probably a fucking weather balloon. And that was absolutely ridiculous. Mexican church officials helped arrange a truce between two warring drug cartels. This one's interesting because here the media is screaming about the drug cartels and how violent they are and how the Mexican president basically is not doing enough to go after the cartels. Meanwhile, the same media people in the same breath complain about El Salvador every time they try to do, since they've been doing a lot to take care of their cartel problem, and they can't stop crying about Bukele and his measures that basically made El Salvador a much safer place. So on the one hand, they complain about El Salvador actually effectively fighting gang violence, but then they say President Obrador is not doing enough with his policy. So it just goes to show you how full of shit the media is and how they're not. It's all a farce. Venezuela receives $500 million payment from Haiti. So basically, this is an interesting story, and this could have implications. Venezuela has been for some time and still is uh, sending fuel to Haiti, and Haiti, or maybe in the past, had sent fuel to Haiti, and Venezuela basically gave the fuel to Haiti on credit, and now I guess they just got a $500 million payment for that debt, and that probably means that Haiti in the future is going to want more fuel from Venezuela, and that's going to be a source of tension. Of course, the United States is not going to like that, so let's keep an eye on that. Close these windows. Basically, a couple weeks ago, I reported on a very promising situation as far as making peace with the remaining rebel groups in Colombia. Well, apparently one of those rebel groups said no, deals off. Government's not with the government's not living up to their side of the terms, so we're withdrawing from the peace agreement. So that was just going along with a story I reported on a couple weeks ago. Russia. So Lavrov actually came to Venezuela, and they're talking about nuclear cooperation. So that's very great. What's happening here, actually, and this is we're going to see more and more of this. Russia is no longer going to respect the red lines of the United States, because the United States has crossed over all of Russia's red lines. So now what we're going to see is a more aggressive Russia. They're going to more aggressively support countries like Venezuela and whoever else wants to be a partner. And so this is actually, to me, it's a signal of escalating not aggression, but it's a signal that Russia is no longer holding back insofar as who it's having diplomatic ties with, if that makes any sense. I had a hard time getting that out. Brazil recalls ambassador to Israel. So this goes back to Lula basically correctly comparing what Israel is doing in Gaza to the Holocaust. Of course, that's the one thing that's really going to trigger Israelis and supporters of Israel, because it's true, first of all. That's why it triggers them, because if it wasn't true, it wouldn't trigger them so badly. And, of course, it just goes to show you how history tends to take the most ironic twists possible. I always like to say history loves irony. And Lula correctly pointed out that Israel is in many ways resembling the Third Reich. And, of course, the Israelis didn't like that. They were very upset about that, so fuck them. Poverty in Argentina hits 20-year high. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I don't have high hopes for Milei. He seems kind of like too much like a Maloney type figure. Maloney being this prime minister, female prime minister of Haiti, who looked really promising, that turned out to be a complete tool. We have ongoing in Rafah right now, down here in southern Gaza. The Israelis are pounding Rafah. We're almost at 30,000 casualties in the Gaza genocide. So we're about at 30,000 casualties. It seems like they're not really letting up. As far as the Israelis, they're not really letting up. They're bombing. They haven't entered, as far as I know, with troops yet into Rafah, but they are bombing the fuck out of Rafah, and casualties are going up very quickly. We're going up at it seems like 1,000 a week or several hundred a week. So it's mostly, of course, if not all, civilians. So this is a real fucking shit show. Of course, the United States is talking out of both sides of its mouth. On the one hand, it's saying what Israel is doing is wrong, and on the other hand, they're supporting Israel, and they're sending weapons to Israel and sending money to Israel. Same thing happened here with Congo, by the way, which I didn't mention, is the United States, of course, is involved in what's going on in Congo. Earlier this week, first France came out with a statement saying that Rwanda needs to, if Rwanda's doing anything bad, they need to stop. Of course, France already knows that what Rwanda's doing, it has probably been supporting it, right? But definitely the United States has been supporting it because the United States gets a lot of these minerals that come from these fake mines that are actually come in Rwanda that are actually coming from Congo and being stolen. The United States has received a lot of those. So the United States is definitely involved. They're using Qatar, and then Qatar is using Rwanda. Like I said, it's a double proxy situation. But then earlier this week, after France came out with their statement, then the United States came out with a statement saying, Rwanda, stop being bad. Well, this is just like what's happening in Israel. The United States says, oh, we don't like what Israel's doing, but, what can we do? And then, on the same breath, they send weapons, they send aid to Israel. This is the same thing that's going on in Congo. So it's double speak. This is why the United States is losing its diplomatic reputation across the world because of stuff like this. This was an interesting article. This was apparently there was the attack in Syria at Tower 22 a few weeks ago. And apparently, apparently, first of all, what I'm hearing, and I don't think it's in this particular article, what I'm hearing is that those militia groups didn't mean to kill 3 American soldiers. It was kind of like an accident. They didn't want to kill soldiers like that. They wanted to just, attack without killing anybody, right? So apparently, this article comes out talking about how Iran sent a special representative, a general of the Quds Force, to go talk to these militia groups. Basically, they're state-sanctioned militia groups, by the way. They're sanctioned by the government of Iraq. He went over there to tell them, hey, stop attacking the Americans for a while because you're bringing too much heat down on us. So that's what that article's about, which is really interesting. Turkey, what happened in Turkey? Turkish-Russian trade hit by fresh... Yeah, so basically, this is an earlier story. Basically, what happened is there was a threat that the United States was going to sanction countries other than Russia that were, as they call it, aiding the Russian military. So that is one article that was from earlier this week, talking about how some people in Turkey are a bit worried about that. And then finally what happened, and I don't have the link here, and I have to fix that. I have to find that link. Let me pause this. So here, I found a link. I don't know if it's the original link, but it's from the original report. And basically, what's interesting about this, this is originally from Reuters. I think that's where I originally got it from. You just got to look. What I found interesting about this article, first of all, they go in here, they say dozens of entities from China, UAE, and Turkey that they target. But if you go down in the article, they say the majority of the sanctions are against Russian companies, 16 from Turkey, 8 from China, and 4 from UAE. So that's taking the word dozens basically that's like really a stretch to say dozens. I mean, if you want to say dozens of companies, you would say 50 or 40 companies were hit. This is only 30 companies. So it's it's over 24 companies. They're trying to make this, it looks like pretty pathetic sanctions, really. I mean, they did most of the sanctions they actually enacted were against Russia, and they added these 30 other countries. So it seems like they were a little scared, and the news is trying to make it look like they hit all these companies, dozens and dozens, right? Well, no, it wasn't dozens and dozens. It was 24 and then some change. So I just thought that was interesting. Really stupid, by the way. Really dumb. It's not going to make any difference in the war. and it's just gonna disrupt commerce more and disrupt the American and European economies. It's just not good. Relighting my cigar. Um, what happened in England? UK bar. Okay, so there was a bit of a tussle in Parliament over a resolution to call for a ceasefire, basically a meaningless resolution anyway, and they got all up in arms over the language of this meaningless resolution. So there's that. France economic forecast reduced a little bit, so they're looking at a 1% growth rate. It was like 1.4 or something. Now it's down to 1%. Here we go. EU sanctions again. Okay, same sanctions. Serbian President Vucic complaining that no one in the world, none of the world leaders that he talks to, I think he said he was at the Munich Security Conference, and nobody was concerned with promoting peace at all. It was all about war, war, war. So that's very nice. Polish farmers blocking the border to Ukraine, stopping grain exports. So there's that. That's good. That's kind of a big deal. Sweden, dumbass Sweden gives more money to Ukraine. Moscow arrests a woman, a ballerina, who apparently is a dual citizen, United States and Russia, and apparently she was sending money to Ukraine. I guess the money is tied to the people she sent the money to are tied to the Ukrainian military. So she's in Russia now. She's in jail. Really dumb. That's really dumb, actually. I mean, you got to think about these things before you do it, okay? You really do. China, now this is cool. This is cool. I really like this article. Of course, computer is acting up. I'm going to close some of these extra programs here. Okay, so this is really cool. So basically, China is building massive solar fields solar fields out here in the Gobi Desert, and they're using some pretty cool technology to transfer this energy east over to the more populated regions of China, mostly I'm sure down here, across here, and then up to Beijing, I'm sure, wherever Beijing is at. Isn't Beijing somewhere over here somewhere? Where's Shandong? Yeah, Beijing. So they have all these huge solar fields out here now. They're producing, according to this article, the production capacity of all of these resources, these power generation resources, a lot of them are renewable. I don't think all of them are, but a good percentage of them are, is something like half of the production capacity of the United States. So I just thought this is a really cool thing. You know, there's been a lot of propaganda about the Chinese economy. Something I really want to talk about, I've talked about before. So really quickly, it's just as simple. The Chinese property sector is having issues because they had a huge property bubble. The Chinese stock market in Shanghai went down 11% in the last month or two. Okay, it's a correction, right? We just got out of a bear market that lasted 2 years, and we were down here in the United States 22%. And everybody's talking all this shit about the Chinese economy. Most of the correction in the stock market is because of the property sector and the banking sector that's tied to the property sector. That is a very small part of the Chinese economy, relatively speaking. Chinese economy is still a manufacturing behemoth, and that shows no signs of having a serious problem. We had the PMIs go down a little bit, but they're back above 50%. They've been back above 50% for some time. So no, the Chinese economy is not falling apart. This is propaganda. This is, again, Americans with their heads up their asses. And it's just like a drug addict. When a drug addict talks shit about his drug addict friends, oh, he smokes crack, he's fucked up, I only do heroin. This is what's really going on here. It's the United States just talking shit about China. China's economy is going to be fine. And the property sector is correcting itself, and the Chinese government is trying to unwind it. Unlike what happened in the United States, where instead of trying to unwind the property sector, the United States government made every step to reinflate it. And now we're at where we are at right now, which is an unaffordable housing market, commercial real estate that has been on the verge of collapse for years now. So we're in a worse position than we were in 2007. And what it looks to me, what China is trying to do is they're trying to responsibly unwind that property sector. That's the way I see it. But Americans are so full of shit and so full of propaganda, it's useless to even talk to. I am an American. I would know. They're too arrogant. They have their heads too far up their asses. You can tell them that the sky is blue, and they'll tell you you're wrong. It's fucking purple. Is what they'll do because they have their heads up their asses. South Korea, basically, what's happening in South Korea is the doctors, the interns, and a lot of the doctors are pissed off because the medical schools are allowing more doctors in, which is going to put downward pressure on the pay of doctors. That's what they're really pissed off about, right? But what they're saying is it's going to impact patient care and patient safety. Adding more doctors is going to impact patient care and safety in a negative sense. I don't think so. What it means is that it's going to have downward pressure on the pay of doctors, and that's what they're upset about. So they're pissed off that the medical schools are allowing more doctors in. Some Congress people went over to Taiwan, of course. Apparently, there was more incidents over here at Kinmen Province or Kinmen County, which are these islands right here that apparently Taiwan that Taiwan owns these islands apparently. So they have. This is actually quite interesting. You have a Taiwanese sort of military outpost here, right off the coast of China. That's not sustainable, folks. And I'm sure people in the United States know this, and people in Taiwan know this. Australian media reports that 53 men have been massacred in Papua New Guinea in the past, I don't know how long it's been. So there's a lot of gang-related violence. What's interesting about this article is they're talking about an influx of weapons coming in. So when someone says there's this unexplained influx of weapons coming into a country, the only thing I can think of is Ukraine, and that those weapons probably went to Ukraine and then were sold on the black market. That's my first theory about that. So that's my theory. We went through most of these stories, didn't we? South Africa having their election May 29th. South Africa's under a lot of pressure right now. Israel's really pissed at them. Apparently, the ANC, the African National Congress, that's basically been in control of the government for decades now, is having its first really hotly contested election. I'm sure there's a lot of outside influence getting involved in this one. So South Africa is going to be one to watch. We already covered all these over here. What is this one about? Oh, military drone. U.S. military drone was shot down near Yemen. U.S. officials say. Very interesting. And then there was a cargo ship that was almost sunk by Yemen. So ships are still getting hit, and this one was not doing good. You can see it listing over there. So they think they can salvage the ship, but it had to be evacuated, and it was listing, and they were thinking for a second it might sink. Oh, this one was interesting. I haven't heard much about it since, but there was talk that Transnistria was going to request that Russia come in and annex them. So Transnistria is this little strip of land here that is internationally recognized as part of Moldova, I guess. But basically, it's a Russian exclave. There's a lot of Russians here left over from the Soviet Union. They don't want to be a part of Moldova anymore. They want to be a part of Russia. So there's that. So basically, a carbon copy of so many of what happened in the Donbass. There's a couple other Russian exclaves like Kaliningrad, and there's some exclaves in the Baltics right now that are they're under a lot of persecution. So another sort of interesting situation that can become a problem really fast. So here we are. So there's that. What happened over here? So Taliban wanted to be recognized by the UN, and the UN basically said no, you have to be nicer to women. And the Taliban said that's a domestic issue. Leave us the fuck alone. Let us run our country like we want. Which, I agree. No one has a right to go into a society and tell them how to run their society, generally speaking. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Now, I don't know. There's a line you can draw at certain practices that are horrific, like maybe slavery or something like that. But if if the Taliban want to enforce these laws, Sharia law, they should be allowed to. And if people don't like it, they'll leave. So I'm kind of against this whole finger wagging thing. It goes back to Europeans and Americans having their heads up their asses, thinking that they can dictate to everybody else in the world how they should live. And people are getting tired. People are fed up with it across the world. And I don't think, again, because they're such narcissists, Americans can't fathom in their minds that everybody is starting to hate them at this point, as far as the American government. Farmers, right? Yeah, farmers' protests continue in India, in New Delhi, and they're getting pretty crazy. Yeah, we still had earlier this week some restrictions to Twitter in Pakistan over the recent elections. This one was interesting. Japan Nikkei stock index breaks its 1989 record for the first time. So the Japanese stock market hadn't been that high since 1989. And if that sounds very, very odd to you, you should probably look into the history of the Japanese asset bubble and then the big crash that happened in the late 80s, and how the Japanese economy has been really stagnant for decades, and it still is. They're just now getting back to 1989 levels. That doesn't mean they're doing good economically. Let's see. Do we have anything else? I think that's it. So this one wasn't too bad. I am out.